Alright, so let's talk a little bit about Dexter, New Blood, Dexter Season 9. Can you believe it? The show that we thought was well and done all those years ago. Dexter was brought back for a 9th season, rebranded as Dexter New Blood. Caused uproar at the time when it was announced. People like things to be left alone. And I have to admit, I'm one of those people for something as... I don't want to say as legendary as Dexter is, 'cause it's not as if it's like this legendary programme. I almost feel like shows that were also around at that time, like The Walking Dead was getting really big around that time, and so was like Breaking Bad and things like that. Game of Thrones was just starting. It's almost like around that time those shows are held in a higher regard than Dexter. Whereas for me, Dexter's probably my favourite of those collection of shows that I just mentioned, because it was like one of the first ones that I properly sat down and watched. There was a weird time in my life, I think it was like 2013, 2014 that I started watching it. Maybe even it was 2012. I was definitely in high school though. When was the last episode of Dexter? I can't remember. Let's see. So obviously the new one just started this year, but I'm going to say 2013, 2014? Final episode of Dexter was September 22nd, 2013. The first episode was October the 1st, 2006. So I watched it much later. And I can't remember why I chose Dexter, but it was around this sort of time where I was doing a total transition on the YouTube channel between talking about wrestling all the time, making this a professional wrestling centred channel, and changing over to like a kind of film-based, not film-based channel, but I talk about films a lot more. More so with myself because I was going through that phase of my life just wanting to watch more things anyway. And it was the year that I kind of started watching more films. I started collecting more films and box sets and TV shows and stuff on DVD and Blu-ray, and really tried to make an effort to go to the cinema a little bit more. And it's also when I just, kind of got into acting and performing and things like that. And I remember at the time being like, I want to find a show that I can really kind of sink my teeth into, because I really like that feeling of being obsessed with a show. Nowadays, I'm much more of a film guy. And I have been for the past few years. I always, consider myself more of a film fan than a TV show fan. Strictly because I think a lot of the charm of watching films is that once you've watched it, it's like, it's not bragging rights, but it's almost something that you can talk about, and you have that kind of knowledge, and you have those opinions that you can share with your friends and on YouTube and things like that. All of you are my friends. But things like that, do you know what I mean? Like, I like to watch films, I like to get them watched and go, okay, I think this about that. This is one of my favourites of this genre, or I didn't enjoy this because of these reasons. And I think films are easier to do that because it's just a film, you can get it watched in a couple of hours, and that's it. Whereas, with TV shows, especially something like Dexter that has 8 seasons before Dexter New Blood, and for shows like Game of Thrones and shows like The Walking Dead and things like that that were kind of around at this sort of time when Dexter was at its peak, there was so many seasons, so many episodes, and getting really stuck into it takes a lot, So in terms of the actual finale of Dexter New Blood, this will be spoiler inclusive, by the way, if you've not seen it. First of all, if you've not seen the Dexter New Blood finale, why are you watching this video? I do not know. You should be pausing this and going to watch it right now. Overall though, really enjoyed the series, and I found this with a lot of the Dexter shows, not that it's slow at times, but you just wanted to keep moving because you know what's going to happen next. You don't know what's going to happen next in terms of the story's twists and turns, but you know that Dexter's going to either get in some trouble and he's going to find a way to get away with it. Dexter always gets away with it. And here's the thing, the Dexter, actual finale from 2013, the Dexter season 8 finale, got so much hate and got so much slack, and I guess I didn't really understand how big of a show Dexter was at the time on like HBO. Was it HBO? Was it Showtime? Showtime. I didn't understand how big of a show it was in America as well, because I was watching it so far behind. So when the Dexter finale aired, I may have been on season 3 or 4, and I was trying to avoid all spoilers left, right and centre from like people talking about it on YouTube and in the media and on podcasts and things like that. I did everything I could to, get away from the finale spoilers, because I just assumed that he would die. Or something would happen. Maybe not die, but he would be caught and that would be it. You know what I mean? So I stayed away from all the spoilers, didn't hear anything about it. And then when I finally did watch the season 8 finale, I wasn't annoyed, I wasn't bored, I wasn't let down. I was perfectly happy and content with the ending. I thought it made sense because Dexter always gets away with it. You know what I mean? He's a smart guy, he's a likeable guy. He has people on the inside. He's got the code, he's got the dark passenger, things like that. There's always a way for Dexter to get away with it. So the fact that he didn't die, it looked as if he was going to die. He drove his boat into the hurricane, after Deb had been killed, which was horrid. And you know, I was wondering, is he going to be the one to kill his own sister? And that never happened. It was a blood clot thing, I believe, was Deb's injury. Also like that about New Blood, by the way, about how Deb was the dark passenger inside Dexter's head, no longer his dad. It was the next person closest to him, and it was his sister. That was a really nice touch. Good way to get her back in the cast as well. So yeah, I was perfectly happy with the ending because from a perspective, if you're in Miami and you know you're working in the police force, like you're kind of going along with the ride with Dexter this whole time, like the kind of vibe of the show's always been, you just assume then that's it, you know. From that perspective, but then you see this little post-credit scene. I don't think it's post-credits, but it's like after the ending. He's like a lumberjack or something like that. People are going, no, that doesn't make any sense. He could have just committed suicide and it would have been the end of it, stuff like that. But again, Dexter always finds a way to get away with it. He starts this new life. He's lost everything he has. He's starting fresh. So when they announced New Blood, I was like, what are they going to do? Are they just going to do this series just to make people happy? Just to rectify the fact that it was such a negative, you know, response to the finale, even though I was perfectly content with it and stuff like that. So that's what I was thinking. I was like, really, that's what it's going to be? I thought it was going to be a complete spin-off and it was going to be completely different. They wouldn't mention much about the past. Little did I know it's literally season 9. It's literally picking things up. You know, Dexter's in a new place. He's in a kind of snow environment called Iron Lake, isolated from everything else. He's got this new life. He's got this new girlfriend who just so happens to be on the police force. And then in the first episode, one of my favourite moments of the whole series actually was when now older Harrison shows up in Iron Lake. And it was so cool because that first episode he has established this new identity as Jim Lindsay. And you're thinking that's the way it's going to be. We're probably not even going to hear the name Dexter that much. You don't hear it at all in that first episode, other than I think maybe Deb calls him Dex or something like that. And then Harrison shows up, he thinks it's a burglar in his house, and it's Harrison, his son, and he's like, are you Dexter Morgan? And that moment it kind of makes you jump, just like it makes him jump, and it goes, oh God, like that's a blast from the past. And it's Harrison, you see Harrison at his very early stages in the last 4 or 5 seasons of Dexter. So that's always funny seeing him as a wee boy. The scene where he's like on the blood and things like that, which is very similar to the way Dexter was when he was a baby and stuff like that. Very disturbing stuff. And you don't feel, you know, connected to him as a child or anything like that, like you have done in other shows, because you see other children grow up on screen in certain shows. You don't really see Harrison grow up. You see the first couple of years of his life and stuff like that, but seeing him growing up and seeing him as an 18-year-old kid was weird and a nice touch to the show actually. I didn't expect that to be the storyline. I just thought it would be another way to have Dexter involved in a story, but the fact they brought Harrison in there, I thought that was a really nice touch. He ends up kind of like dating Dexter's girlfriend's daughter and doing well in school and things like that, and having friends and things that Dexter didn't have. Dexter doesn't really know how to react to that and adapt to being a good father, because he's created this new world. He just didn't expect to see Harrison ever again, which is really sad when you think about it. I almost feel like that kind of aspect of the original Dexter series is overlooked, because you just assume Dexter drove away and that's the end of it and that's fine. But the fact he has left his son, you know what I mean, is a big deal. So yeah, Dexter realises that Harrison has his dark passenger as well. He has these dark tendencies, and Dexter tells him everything. It's pretty much, he doesn't necessarily say I kill people, but he kind of spells it out, and Harrison understands and stuff. And the guy Kurt, the main kind of villain on the show, they kind of killed together, and that was a big moment as well, seeing it happen and seeing the look on Harrison's face. Great performances from Harrison the actor. Let's see who plays Harrison in New Blood. I think it's Jack Alnott or something like that. Yes, Jack Alcott. Doesn't have a Wikipedia page. Julia Jones is Angela, and Johnny Sikoa is Audrey. And also I really liked Sergeant Logan, Alan O'Miller, who was like the nice guy, the wrestling coach, the kind of nice cop. And that whole last episode, it was an amazing last episode of TV, seeing it all come together, you know what I mean, and seeing Dexter being busted, and it's the first time you really see him, and he's still always got answers, you know what I mean, like he gets put in handcuffs and stuff, and Angela's talking to him, and he's still coming up with answers. He's still reciting things that he's obviously been thinking about ever since he left Miami in case something bad happens, you know. She asks him questions about his past and things like that when she finds out his identity is actually not Jim Lindsay and is Dexter Morgan. I like that hint. The author of the books, by the way, Jeff Lindsay, they called the character Jim Lindsay in the show. So yeah, that dynamic of having like the wrestling coach being like a kind of good guy and a father-like figure to Harrison, and also Harrison being involved with Audrey, and then, you know, Dexter being like a almost a husband type to Angela at some points. So it's all a nice kind of situation he's found himself in. He's happy at times, and then boom, it strikes. And the fact they mention things like the Bay Harbour butcher and things like that, that's really bringing it back. And it really made me sometimes want to look it up on YouTube, and I had to do that a couple of times and just refresh my memory, because it's been so long since I watched it, you know. I just loved that character so much, loved that show so much. It was a one-time watch for me. Like, I watched it at the time and that was it. I finished it in 2014 and that was me. A lot of people go back to shows and stuff, but it's just, I don't know, I feel like I had such a good time with that first series. I didn't want it to be tarnished, I didn't want a sequel made, I didn't want to go back to it. I like those memories in my head of that character, but I was very impressed and very happy with the new series. I thought it was great, and as I say, an amazing series finale. That's what I was going to say. I got off track. He was. You see him vulnerable and stuff when he's got his hands in his head and he's got his handcuffs and stuff, and they're pulling him in, and then he kills Logan in the jail cell, and it was like, whoa. At that moment I was like, it's going down. And then obviously Angela wants to believe what he's saying about Kurt and all these different dynamics and stuff. They didn't hold back on anything, which I really, really liked, and I just thought it was a brilliant series finale, a really good series. And if their goal was to rectify all the negative comments about the original finale, then I think they've done a great job, because all I've seen online is positive comments about it, which is great to see. Not that it mattered, I was still going to enjoy it anyway, but such an iconic character, they put a bow on it finally, and I couldn't believe they killed him off, basically because I just assumed there'd be a second series of New Blood, which maybe now thinking about it is a bit naive of me and a bit silly of me, but I just assumed the show was so good, there's so much more you could tell with Harrison. You know what I mean? I just thought that would add on a couple of more series, but maybe there will be another story about Harrison, about where he goes after this, you know. Now he's back on his own, there's so much more there. How does he live, you know? What else does he discover about himself? Does he live with the Dark Passenger? Is it going to be Dexter? Is he Harrison's Dark Passenger? Is that going to be a series, a spin-off on Showtime? Who knows? I'd like to see it. But yeah, I couldn't believe they killed him. It was a shocker. A sad moment, an iconic character, one of my favourite characters in the history of television, but it was like Harrison's the one that did it. It was a gunshot, which is like, it's the one thing Dexter doesn't use. He doesn't use guns. They're too noisy, they're too messy, they leave too many evidence. You know, they're not as subtle as a knife and cutting someone up and burning their bodies or dropping it in a lake or whatever. So yeah, it was a great series, an amazing finale, a shocker of an ending, a kind of sad ending knowing that we're not going to see that character anymore, but as I say, he could easily be Harrison's Dark Passenger in his head. That might be the next thing forward, and I would put some money on that, I think. But yeah, hope everyone else enjoyed it. If you watched, let me know what you thought of Dexter New Blood, and if you have any thoughts about where they could go now with the characters and things like that. I certainly think so. And until next time, thanks very much for watching this video on CM42 TV. I'll see you later.